everyone! So this week I chose Pedagogy, Psychoanalysis, Theater, Interrogating the Scene of Learning by the author Barbara Friedman. So it starts off with an introduction, and in the introduction she basically explains that these three, pedagogy, psychoanalysis, and theater, are all linked together and can be referenced across the board to create a way of learning. So what she does is break this up into sections. The main sections are pedagogy, psychoanalysis, and theater. And in the pedagogy section, she makes reference to Socrates. And she quotes him, and she says, "He urges us to know how we don't know, to know that we don't know, if not to know what we don't know." And this first section after the introduction really got me going, just because of the fact that it really talked about how a lot of people don't know something, and that they don't know something, and that we don't know something, and they don't know that we don't know, and it just was a vicious cycle of not knowing. And and she uses Socrates to go further into detail with that. But what I got from it, what the end result basically said, was that basically it's best to acknowledge the fact that we don't know something so that we can open ourselves up to learn, to finally know something. So that's kind of what that first section talked about. So the next section that I found interesting was psychoanalysis. The psychoanalysis section. I thought this one was really cool because she kind of says, hey, yeah, it has therapeutic value. Psychoanalysis has therapeutic value, but let's go further into that. So one of her quotes is, one of the things she says is, there is value in its ability to displace. And by that, she basically means that in a typical therapy session, the therapist is there to ask questions. They're there to listen and ask the questions. They're not really there to advise. They shouldn't advise you. They are mostly there to ask you the questions and get you thinking, and finally you, the patient, come up with a solution on your own. And that's kind of when the argument kind of became clear to me in that. So obviously, if we're talking about psychoanalysis, we always have to talk about Freud. So in that psychoanalysis section, she referenced Freud and talked about many of his techniques that he used. But basically it all led to that same conclusion, that the therapist asks the question and the patient comes up with the answer. And one of the cool things that she quoted from Freud was that the poets and dramatists discovered the unconscious before I did. So basically, he's saying that this concept of trying to get the patient to come up with their own solution was something that he learned from theater. So that brings us to one of the last sections, which is theater. And in this section, she references several plays. She references Shakespeare and Taming of the Shrew. So in this, she basically draws the conclusions that Petruchio takes the role of the teacher, Kate is the student, and his house is the school. So right there in that play, it's opening you up to a type of learning environment. And then the other thing that she references in this section is Oedipus. And she talks about his struggle in choosing to forget what he learned about his past and what his prophecy is. Basically because he doesn't want to know it. And that then draws us to the conclusion, takes us to the conclusion. So then in the conclusion she says, teaching is a leading that cannot determine its direction in advance. So what I got from that was that pedagogy, teaching, should take from theater and from psychoanalysis, in that it shouldn't just be about teaching. It should be about asking questions to the students and getting them to come up with their solutions. And I thought that was really cool, and that kind of leads me to how I believe the article moves theater forward. I think that one of the most important things is that all of these things, pedagogy, theater, psychoanalysis, it's always evolving. It's always changing. So in order to continue to learn, we should acknowledge that. We should acknowledge that it's changing, it's evolving, and we should evolve with it so that we can further learn. So overall, I thought the article was really interesting. It definitely opened up my mind to a lot of different things about theater, about teaching. And I thought the organization was great. She opened with an introduction. She broke it down into sections. She even, before every section, she put a little quote that kind of prefaced each section. So I thought that was really cool. And I think the argument was really effective. I thought she really backed up everything she was saying with just real evidence, real plays, real quotes, real techniques, real learning. So that's pretty much it. Until next week.